Welcome to Healthier Together, Larimer County's public health podcast, where we come together for healthier lives, connected communities, and real conversations. From your local public health team, I'm your host, Tom.
And I'm Joanna. Ground level ozone is Larimer County's most pressing air quality issue. In the summer months, we frequently experience unhealthy levels of ground level ozone. Today, we're joined by Mike Silverstein and Kelsey Simpkins. Mike is the Executive Director of the Regional Air Quality Council, which serves as the lead air quality planning organization for the North Front Range Ozone Non-Attainment Area. Kelsey is the Council's Communications and Program Manager and oversees their Simple Steps, Better Air program. They're here to tell us a bit more about ground-level ozone in our region and the work being done to improve our air quality. Kelsey and Mike, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
To start, can you just explain what the Regional Air Quality Council is and the work that you do?
The Regional Air Quality Council was established in 1989. As mentioned, we're the lead planning organization for our Front Range Ozone Non-Attainment Area. The non-attainment area stretches from the Wyoming border with Weld County all the way through most of Larimer County and our Denver metro communities to the El Paso County line through Douglas County. So it's a very large non-attainment area. We have serious air pollution issues in our region, and it's our job at the RAQ to develop strategies and approaches to make a difference. Our board is appointed by the governor. We have a 30-member diverse board that represents all aspects of our economy and of our region. We also have one elected official from Larimer County, and right now it's the town attorney from Estes Park, and his name is Dan Kramer. He's also our chair. The governor appoints the chair. So we have official representation from Larimer County. The RAQ is an advisory body. We're not a regulatory group, and we don't have the authority to adopt rules or regulations. So we're advisory. We make recommendations to decision makers. The role of the RAQ is to work with state agencies, local government, and all of our community members, industry groups, and stakeholders to develop air quality programs and implement measures that improve our air quality over time. We have contracts and grants from the state of Colorado, from the metropolitan planning organizations and transportation communities that help fund us so that we're hearing from all voices in the region so that we can then develop strategies that people can embrace and that can really make a difference in our lives from a public health perspective.
What does non-attainment mean?
Non-attainment is a term that is in the Federal Clean Air Act. When an area does not achieve federal health standards, it falls into a non-attainment classification. We're not attaining the levels or the thresholds of air pollution that are deemed to be acceptable. And so as a non-attainment area, our pollutant is ozone, and that's really a summertime issue for us. So our governor provides us an executive order that gives us our charge to go do good things and make a real difference to help the region come into compliance with the ozone standards. There's always going to be air pollution, no doubt. We can sustain certain amounts of air pollution and remain healthy. When we exceed the federal health-based standards that the EPA sets, we fall into this non-attainment classification, and then we are required to develop plans and programs as a state and as local communities to bring us into compliance.
Can you explain for our listeners what ozone is exactly?
Yes, I'm Kelsey, and I'm running our Simple Steps Better Air program here, which is a lot of science education, which I love doing. So happy to chime in and explain that. We have heard about ozone for many decades. Anywhere you live in the world, we all know about the ozone layer. And the cool fact about that is that it's the same stuff down here at ground level, but they serve very different purposes or have very different impacts at different levels of the atmosphere. So when we think about ozone up in the ozone layer, up in the stratosphere, it protects us. It's like a sunscreen from the sun, and we want that. So we're trying to save the ozone layer, but down here at ground level, ozone is a pollutant. And it's also kind of a sneaky pollutant because it is invisible and you also can't smell it. And so while it does combine sometimes with other pollutants to form photochemical smog or sometimes haze we'll see here in the Front Range, as its own molecule, ozone is invisible and it's formed when other pollutants combine. So it's something that we do create here in the Front Range.
What does air quality data look like over time for our region? Has this issue been getting better or has it been getting worse?
We have better air quality today than we've had in the past, and that's excellent news. And that's a tribute to the numerous programs that have been put in place that are designed to drive emissions down. And so if you've lived in Colorado for a long time, you're familiar with the brown cloud, infamous air quality problems in the 80s and 90s for the Denver area and other regions across the nation too. And we were out of compliance with the particulate standards that EPA set, the carbon monoxide standards. That visible pollution was just so much more dramatic than it is today. But guess what? We solved those problems. And how did we solve them? Through emission control programs and public outreach and education and all the things that we do at RAQ with our partners throughout our community. So we've done it before, and it's our goal to do it again with ozone. But as I mentioned, we've hit a plateau where we know we have progress that we can make, and we just have to do more. We still see 20, 30, 40 days a summer where this region somewhere is in excess of that ozone standard that EPA sets. And so that's the bad news, is that we have numerous days of non-compliance. And so we need to develop plans and programs continuing to explore options that can help us reduce emissions further to reach attainment. And that's the goal of the Regional Air Quality Council, to come up with the recommendations and approaches and programs to get us into compliance with the ozone standards by the early 2030s.
So how do we measure ground level ozone then?
Well, there's a series of monitors that the state of Colorado operates. The Regional Air Quality Council, we're a private nonprofit that's been given the charge to come up with approaches to make improvement. But the state of Colorado has the larger program to implement regulatory efforts, issue permits to industrial facilities, and operate monitors that measure our air quality continuously. So there's monitors up and down the Front Range that are placed to detect those more maximum concentrations of ozone. But these strategically placed monitors, and there's about 15 of them, maybe a few more now, a lot of them are close to the foothills. And so the state of Colorado operates these monitors under very tight specifications that are set by the EPA. And those ozone monitors measure ozone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and those data are reported. And so we take that data and we process the information along with our partners at the state agencies, and that gives us the foundations for our work.
Out of curiosity, what do these monitors look like?
Boy, it's they're not very sexy. They're housed in a small shed or in a building. There is simply a probe that comes out of the rooftop that is attached, of course, to equipment within inside that building under very tight operating conditions that pull in those samples of air and do the analysis of what pollutes are detected in that sample of air. And it's a continuous process where there's a pump that is sucking in the air through the tube, and then it goes into the analytical equipment, and then ozone numbers are reported.
Where exactly does this ground level ozone come from? Is there a primary contributor to it, or is it a combination of different sources?
The ground level ozone is formed when other things combine, like I mentioned. So to get into a little bit of a science lesson here, we have things called volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, and things called nitrogen oxides. And together, these are called ozone precursors because they kind of together, are the ingredients for the soup that bakes in the air on these really hot, sunny summer days. And so the sunshine and the heat are the catalyst where these two pollutants that we a lot of times pump out here at ground level do combine and then get stuck here in the Front Range and build up to those unhealthy levels. And so I'll turn it over to Mike maybe to point out some of the the top places that these volatile organic compounds and nitrogen oxides come from?
The chemical mix is pretty complex. Sources of the emissions are really everything we do. So whether we're combusting coal in a power plant, or we're burning gasoline in our vehicles or in our trucks and buses, or we're using products in our home, consumer products. It's the paints and solvents and cleaners and perfumes, anything that smells nice. Ooh, that's a nice fresh fragrance in our home. Guess what? That's a volatile compound that in the right conditions can become ozone. So there's so many sources that are around us. The dominant sources are vehicle exhaust. And so when you have the millions of vehicles, operating in our non-attainment area every day, I think the number is close to 90 million miles that we drive every day in our region. Wow. 90 million miles every single day. That's a lot of fuel that's combusted. Thankfully, our pollution control equipment on our vehicles is dramatically improved compared to 20, 30 years ago. But still, there's lots of leftovers. So we have vehicle exhaust. We have oil and gas. It's a very important industry for our state, but it's a heavy emitter. It is our largest emitter of pollutants of ozone. But we look at the emission sources and we try to decide where can we find opportunities for controlling those emissions. So power generation, the nitrogen oxides that'll come out of burning natural gas or coal in our power plants are important sources. Mowing our grass, that's one we talk about a lot. Using the lawn and garden equipment that uses gasoline. It's a heavy emitter of volatile organic compounds. We also get a lot of ozone that's given to us from our upwind neighbors. Ozone is a pollutant that really gets transported across our country and around the globe. So we get ozone that those emissions originated in Asia. We get wildfires that occur just on a regular basis in our summer months in the West and throughout North America that contribute to ozone. So it's a very complex mix of sources that it all adds up with the right conditions when our meteorology is conducive to the ozone building up throughout the day with that bright sunshine, the warm temperatures, kind of stagnation in our atmosphere to build up through the afternoon and peak in the late afternoon, evening hours. And then when that sun goes down, hey, there goes the driver of the chemical reaction and ozone levels drop. But guess what? Starts all over again the next morning. So it's a complicated process. The only way we know how to improve air quality is to control emissions and reduce emissions. And so that's why we operate the programs and we make recommendations in the manner that we do so we can achieve those goals over time.
How does ground level ozone impact health?
So this is a really important question because it's the reason we have our system in place currently and why the RAQ exists. We are trying to get the levels down because of health reasons, because ozone is bad for our health. So at higher concentrations, breathing in ground level ozone can do everything from irritate your lungs and your throat. It can make you a little bit more susceptible to respiratory infections. And some of the harsher impacts in the short term, it can exacerbate ailments such as asthma or COPD. So you do have some sort of respiratory, like chronic respiratory issue. Ozone can really have a strong impact on health in the short term. And then in the long term, it's really not good to have higher exposure over time. It can really stress the body. So it can also have cardiovascular impacts over time or raise risk of stroke. And so in general, for the average person, if you're out on a day primed for high ozone, we do recommend people, just pay attention to their body because it's going to affect everyone a little bit differently. It may show up a little bit different for you than someone else. And it can make it a little bit harder to breathe. So if you're out on what seems to be a really beautiful sunny summer day, it doesn't look like there's any wildfire smoke and air quality should be wonderful. That's why we really do want to raise awareness of ozone because, again, that invisible aspect can be kind of hard to pinpoint. Oh, that's what's making it harder to breathe, out on my jog or my bike ride that day.
Who is most at risk for those more serious health impacts?
Yeah. So like I mentioned, folks who have some sort of chronic respiratory condition are kind of that number one group. So anyone with asthma or something in that realm. But the other group, we do like to highlight our children. They are usually outside a lot in the summer, running around, breathing heavily, having the time of their lives. They're also still developing and their lungs are also smaller. So there's multiple variables why they are going to kind of be processing more of that air and they're potentially getting more exposure to ozone through that. So we want, the health of our children to be good. And so that's something to also pay attention to. Children may not know how to put it into words that they're not feeling well on a high ozone day in the afternoon. Folks who are older as well, senior citizens and folks who are elderly are also potentially more affected. And then folks who are active outdoors, whether that's for work or for play. So if you love to go ride your bike, go on runs, do our, wonderful outdoor things here in the Front Range, that is something where you might see more exposure and you could end up being more impacted by that for your health. Outdoor workers, folks in construction, and anybody who just kind of doesn't have that option, of course, is going to be outdoors potentially all day in those peak hours, like Mike mentioned, in the afternoons. And so then again, it's maybe not that person is going to be more susceptible, but they're just going to get more exposure over time. And those things do really add up. The last note I want to make, especially relevant to Larimer County, is that, like Mike's mentioned, it's a pretty large non-attainment area. And we do kind of see this group project aspect in terms of the way the air moves and spreads throughout the region. And it's not quite as straightforward as you might think. So we think about the air moving over the mountains and coming down and blowing out towards the plains. That's not always the case given our meteorology and our topography here in this non-attainment region. And so sometimes the air actually moves backwards or counterclockwise and can get kind of pulled against the foothills. And so some of those pollutants and therefore the ozone that forms can actually be higher in the cities who kind of line the foothills. So if you think about Chatfield, Golden, Boulder, and unfortunately Fort Collins and these beautiful kind of foothill communities, that's actually where the air can get trapped and you can see somewhat higher levels than other places in the region. So I wanted to point out for your listeners that in Larimer County, there may be higher days than some of the other parts of the region.
As people plan activities throughout the summer, what steps can they take to protect their health on those high ozone days?
This is a great question because there are a lot of options for people to take when it's a higher ozone day or an ozone action day, as they're often called. And so again, depends on your health and your tolerance and your goals. And so it's not necessarily that we need or want everyone to stay home all the time on these days, but that might be the best choice for you. So if it's a really high ozone day and you have asthma or some other higher risk condition, and you really want to minimize or eliminate that exposure, if you stay indoors, run the AC, close the windows, ozone typically cannot build up indoors the same way it can build up outside because the UV will react with the building and the windows and things, and that chemical reaction just isn't strong indoors. So it's really an outdoor phenomenon as long as your windows are closed. So that's kind of option number one. The rest are a bit more strategic. So if you're, say, someone who's training for some sort of athletic activity or just really focused on getting in shape this summer, we recommend you get outdoors in the morning because typically ozone, again, builds up over the course of the day and those levels will be lowest, before work or in those cooler morning hours. And it's a great way to also beat the heat. So we do recommend folks take advantage of our early morning hours here in Colorado. You can also switch that and maybe chase the sunset, as we call it, where you get out after 7, 8 p.m. at night. And our beautiful evenings here where ozone, again, goes down a little bit because the sun is not, out here making that chemical reaction happen quite as much. Another option is if you were going to go for a really intense run, maybe dial it down to a walk. You can take it easier outside. Again, just paying attention to your body and seeing what works for you.
Are there differences in how you should protect your health on days where air quality is poor due to wildfire smoke versus ground level ozone?
Yes, there are some important differences there. So like I mentioned, ozone is, a pollutant that kind of gets created here locally and is affected by weather. And we often recommend, especially if you're really sensitive, to stay indoors because it cannot form indoors. If we're having a big wildfire smoke event locally, some of the same tips do still apply because we don't necessarily want you going out and breathing a ton of that, right? So we do recommend taking it easier outside on wildfire and ozone days. That's the same advice there. Or staying inside is also mutually beneficial for high smoke days. The trick is that if you're going to stay inside for a day with wildfire smoke, it can find its way inside. We do recommend running a good quality air filter or some sort of standalone HEPA filter or that type of thing for wildfire smoke. But air filtration is not actually that useful for ozone. It's a gas. If you think about bad smoke days, often people will go outside and actually wear face masks and N95s. Those are literally created to filter out the particles of smoke that are in the air, but they don't filter for gases, which is why they're safe to breathe through. So oxygen, carbon dioxide, all that stuff flows freely through the mask, but then ozone also equally can flow through that mask. So the really important thing is if it's a smoke day, there are certain things you can do in addition outdoors that really don't make sense or don't really seem to help that much with ozone.
So that kind of begs the question, how can people find out if it is an ozone action day? Where should they be looking?
It's a great question, and there's a couple different options. And so the option, of course, we'd love to promote is we will tell you. So we have an alerts system that only sends alerts on the days where there's high ozone. So we will try not to bother you too much, but we'll send you a text or an email, whichever you prefer. And if you go to our website at simplestepsbetterair.org, you can find the sign up page and then see a little more information about what that means, kind of what the information is that we'll send you. And you can test that out and sign up for emails or texts. That keyword is 21,000 or 21 with 3 zeros to BetterAirCO. The other options include getting emails from the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. So if you're looking for an email every single day, regardless if it's a yay or nay day for ozone, they've got you covered, and you can head to their website to sign up for those. You can also check for real-time information at the state website, which is a great resource. They have lists of kind of all the different monitors and sort of where in the area maybe ozone is peaking versus where it's lower. And then there's also something called the Air Quality Index. And so that is a color-coded system that people may have seen on their weather apps or in other places where they look for, what is the air quality right now? And that's kind of a somewhat 24-hour averaged tool to help people understand the current air quality, but with the context of kind of what's recently been happening.
What is considered high ozone?
The EPA sets the standard. So the standard that EPA has set is 70 parts per billion of ozone. So how do you grasp that? That's a challenge. It's based on the monitoring data that EPA has evaluated with their public health research community that's determined what is the threshold for good public health or poor public health. So 70 parts per billion is the number that is the federal ozone standard. So the number is 70. So when we hit 70 or higher, that means that we begin to fall into the non-compliant ozone levels.
Gotcha. And I did have another follow-up question for you, Kelsey. You mentioned that there's these ozone action days and these alerts. Is that something that can be forecasted, or is that something that's, hey, this is what the threshold is, it's been tripped, and not, hey, we're forecasting a really sunny day with high traffic?
It's, in my experience, it's a bit of both. So essentially, it is a forecast. So the ozone action days are forecasted by the state. And so they make that judgment call based on a lot of data and forecasting. Are we going to exceed today? Are we going to, kind of trip that wire and be in that health territory we want to warn people about? There are other days, unfortunately, where we have those, like you said, those prime conditions, or what I call the perfect pool day, where it's like 80, 90 degrees, really hot out, really sunny, not a lot of wind, and it would be an amazing day, right, to spend it in the water. That, unfortunately, is a typical high ozone day. And so what we often see is that if we have multiple days in a row of that type of weather, it's less a forecast and more of a certainty, where we've clearly exceeded, and they can very confidently say, hey, yes, this is going to be another action day. But in general, it is a forecast. And so it doesn't always mean that on a day we send an alert that we are going to exceed. It's just a very high likelihood. And so that's one of the reasons we do also cross promote. Don't just protect your health, reduce your emissions, and hey, try to be part of the solution on these days, because it's not inevitable on an action day that we will exceed this health standard. It's just a kind of a warning, right? In the same way that we also will, put out warnings on a state level about things like wildfire or other elements that might just be important to take heed of.
Interesting. And Mike, you kind of hinted at this, but are there steps that individuals can take to help reduce ground level ozone in their areas?
We want folks to take action every day. Of course, that's, you get in the habit of doing the right thing all the time. And that really is beneficial, not only in our hot summer months, but year round, because there's other air pollution issues. The same sources contribute to everything. So what we recommend at RAQ is, first of all, stay aware of what that forecast is. So that afternoon forecast, that afternoon alert messaging we're part of is really important for people then to decide what to do to make the difference. Protect themselves, of course, but also reduce their activities that contribute to the problem. So it ranges from keeping your car in good maintenance, driving less, using transit more, carpooling, telecommuting, working from home if possible, or on a regular basis.
Another really easy step that we do promote through the program is to simply not idle your car. So to avoid idling, if you've driven to a trailhead, you're waiting for your friends to arrive, or you're picking up your kid from school, or there's a situation where you're just parked and you're sitting and you might think to idle, maybe for the air conditioning on a hot day, that's just burning your gas money right there.
Fill up your gas tank after 5, because those emissions that, hey, you smell gas, you fill up your car, you get a whiff of gasoline. That's contributing to our local neighborhood air pollution, but also to ground level ozone. But if you fill up your car, you mow the lawn, for example, in the evening as well, those emissions don't have the opportunity to react with sunlight to then build up. And typically that's good enough. We ask people to, hey, forgo that altogether and go electric. Get rid of that gas-powered mower or trimmer or leaf blower.
Those kinds of motors are some of the dirtiest engines still on the market today. They're kind of like driving your car without a catalytic converter. They burn also, I believe it's both gas and oil. And so there's an immediate health impact when you use gas-powered lawn equipment versus if you were to upgrade to electric. And so this year, and actually now, I believe extended for the next couple of years, there is a 30% discount at a lot of retailers statewide to go electric with your lawn and garden equipment. And so there's more information and links to that on our website at simplestepsbetterair.org.
Are there other discounts that people could look into?
Yes. So some of the tips that we recommend, or simple steps to help reduce emissions, do come with discounts or rebates. So there is that 30% discount on new electric lawn and garden equipment. There are also still some e-bike rebates and other EV type discounts, tax credits, that type of thing. That's all, I believe, at the state website. If you want to go look up the Colorado Energy Office, there's lots of great information there. And there's also information available potentially direct to your community. So there may be local options available to residents in different parts of the region. And then some of those discounts might go up again next year. So if this is not the year for you to upgrade or get a new vehicle, pay attention to maybe what might be coming in 2027.
Those are those simple steps that we promote all the time. So we ask people to do things, but it can't just be individuals taking action and they carry all the burden for improvement. So we've worked throughout our community to implement programs to help make that difference. So for example, we help the state with the identification and repair of high-emitting vehicles. So many of us go through an emission testing program for our older vehicles. Those vehicles can fail the emission test. You have to go get a repair, come back, get a confirmatory test that now you're clean and you can register your vehicle. That's the standard process. But there are instances where some of those cars never get repaired properly, or they don't get repaired to an extent that is compliant with standard for cleaner vehicles. So we go out and we help pay for that repair. that a low-income household can't afford, or someone who has some kind of exemption because of income, or they've already spent a lot of money and they still can't pass. Well, we help them make the difference and get those cars into a lower emission state. That's called our Clean Air Auto Repair Program. And that's coming to Larimer County later this year. We're expanding our Denver Metro program and beginning to touch Larimer County, Weld County as well. We'll also be implementing what we call our Engines Off program in the Larimer County region, where we help the operators of food trucks that operate at our festivals and our neighborhoods. But that's a noisy operation. That's a polluting operation. And we provide incentive monies for them to go battery electric or to plug in so that they don't have those emissions and they can still do their business. We can enjoy their products and we all enjoy the better air quality. And also looking at a very small pilot program of providing e-bikes to low income or subsidized housing communities so that they can skip a trip and take a bike instead on that errand. Or if they don't have a vehicle, they call it Uber or some other rideshare program. They can just hop on a bike and run that errand or have a little fun. We're trying to make every effort that we can to expand existing work that we've done in the Denver Metro counties up north. So working to push money into the community to help reduce emissions through these programs that RAQ operates.
Awesome. Mike, Kelsey, thank you both so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
You can find links to learn more about the topics we discussed today in the show notes. If you have a question about public health in Larimer County or a topic you'd like us to discuss, let us know. Email us at healthiertogether@larimer.org. Thanks for listening, Larimer County.
Until next week, stay well, stay connected, and remember, we really are healthier together.